We're all so full of layers, aren't we? How do our earliest relationships inform how those layers will develop? And what if those early relationships are being sabotaged by technology, specifically mothers with infants and cell phones? Just for the record, don't judge the mom in that photo. She'd been in the airport for 20 hours holding her baby almost the entire time. The baby just needed time to stretch out and move freely on the ground, and the poor mom needed a break. Her arms were tired, but someone caught her on camera, and the photo went viral. But that's for another discussion. There is unequivocal research showing the importance of early secure attachments for optimal brain development and long-term satisfying relationships. My question is, how are phones interfering with those relationships? So what's a secure attachment anyway? And why should we care about it? For adults and for children. A secure attachment is a way of understanding the parent-child bond or lack thereof. A child is scared, and now they go to their parent to help them regulate their emotion of fear. If the parent is not there to do that for them, the child becomes obsessed almost with this idea of being scared. Threat and security becomes the main focus of the child, as opposed to developing skills, learning, growing, exploring, playing. Those are the things a child needs to be worried about, not whether or not they're safe. Mothers who consistently reject or ignore their infants' needs tend to produce children who try to avoid contact. Well, that's interesting. What does that mean for us if we try to avoid contact with other people? And what will school look like? What will relationships look like? Essentially, a secure attachment creates a secure base for the child, which gives them permission to explore the world around them because they always know there is someone who cares about them. My suggestion is that a child who lacks that secure base because the parent or primary caregiver is on their cell phone all the time, and the child is not being tuned into. They try to communicate, and the primary caregiver ignores them. So what does that mean for the child? What are the ramifications long term? These two proofs are brought to show that the way that we attach to our primary caregivers affects the way we view relationships in the future. I'm suggesting that early attachments affect us deeply, but not forever, not permanently. A primary caregiver must practice staying attuned to the needs of the child so that they learn to trust the love of others and have satisfying relationships with their spouse, partner, and their own children. There's another interesting correlation between secure attachment and executive functioning. Executive function includes goal-directed behavior, working memory, inhibitory control, problem-solving, self-regulation, and delay of gratification. All of these things are critical and central to positive social interactions and cognitive functioning. All are critical for success in school. So you tell me, if you don't have those things, what label do they give you? Often, it's ADD or ADHD, and then they medicate the child into complacency. It's hard to say that cell phone use by a mother with her infant will cause ADHD, but here's an interesting article I found by Professor Baram at the University of California, Irvine. She researched erratic parenting and the effects on adolescent rats. Her findings are described in an article called Moms, Put Down That Cell Phone. UCI researchers have found that fragmented and chaotic maternal care can disrupt proper brain development in infants, which can lead to emotional disorders later in life. Baram said the brain's dopamine receptors, pleasure circuits, are not mature in newborns and infants, and that these circuits are stimulated by predictable sequences of events, which seem to be critical for their maturation. The researchers found that erratic care in early stages of development can increase the likelihood of risky behaviors, drug seeking, and depression in adolescence and adulthood. Importantly, it shows that it is not how much maternal care that influences adolescent behavior, but the avoidance of fragmented and unpredictable care that is crucial. We might wish to turn off the mobile phone when caring for baby and be predictable and consistent. Dr. Baram is saying something very fascinating here. She's basically telling us that our ability to be happy is stimulated by consistent care of a mother. Consistent care and not fragmented care. I would assume that a mother on a cell phone would give a baby fragmented care because they're busy paying attention to their WhatsApp or their Facebook or whatever else they are doing on their phone, as I am doing sometimes myself. So if that's true, and we're inhibiting a baby's dopamine receptor development, then the child can't feel happiness. And then what happens is they look for a really hardcore experience to give them the feeling of happiness, which otherwise they don't have, like intense drugs or risky behaviors like driving really fast or doing stupid things, which we assume is what normal adolescents do, but maybe that's not true. Maybe it's a cause and effect. This is an experiment done by Edward Tronick called the still face experiment, where he had a mother interacting with her baby. Of course, I tried to embed the video here, but I'm an old lady and I couldn't figure it out. But it's worthwhile because you see how the baby goes into a sort of fight or flight mechanism. The baby just reacts and tries to get the mother engaged and waves its hands and points, but the mother is told to keep a completely affectless face, which she does, and the baby gets more and more stressed out. And you see that the lack of attention from a mother really creates just such a high stress situation for a child. And imagine a child is in that situation constantly, what that does to their brain. A woman at the University of Washington has a fascinating article about how children in chronic adversity in their homes suffer high levels of cortisol. Cortisol is our stress hormone, and when those high levels of cortisol are there constantly, the child sort of becomes immune to the effects of cortisol. And it has an important role. It's used almost like a jolt of coffee in the morning. Most people's cortisol spikes a little bit in the morning to get them sort of, attacking the day. Like, oh, okay, I gotta move. I gotta get to this morning. I gotta get on it. And children who are suffering from high levels of cortisol because of a chronic adversity don't have that experience. Their light is out, almost. And so they don't function in the classroom the way other children function. They don't get along with other kids, and they don't play, and they don't learn. And what might happen is if this cycle isn't broken, the child grows up not having the skills that they need to succeed, and then puts their own children in an adverse situation because they don't know any better. And that loop is being broken, hopefully, by people like Lillian Linguna at the University of Washington, who is trying to study this and figure out how to stop it. Professor Ginsberg shows us in the previous slide how play is so important for children. If you're too busy, you can't play with your kids. It's beneficial both for the adult and for the child. It's really important to use your imagination. It's a really important part of your brain. And it's important to help the child develop theirs. And all these things are being missed if parents are sitting on their phones. So we've seen how ignoring children and insecure attachment can foster negative relationships in the future, dysfunctional executive functioning, problematic dopamine levels, and high levels of cortisol. It's really important for mothers to attend to their babies. That's the bottom line. We gotta support the babies because they need us and they have nobody else. Thank you so much for listening.